Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Erica and I survived a cult and abusive parents, and on this channel I talk about it. So I'm not going to be working on a craft today. I know the last few that I have posted talking about my story, I was working on a knitting project or something while I was talking, and today I just didn't want to try to do that. I'm going to be showing a couple of things and I want to talk about them. So a few years ago, before I had my twins, I don't know if I've mentioned before, but my twins were a surprise and a very big one. We were done after our third child, and somehow past birth control, we have two more. Don't ask. I don't know. It's a part of our story. It's going to be a part of their story forever. And there were a lot of reasons why I emotionally struggled for the entire pregnancy with the fact that I was going to have two more children. But, and whether or not I touch on all of them anytime soon, I don't know. But a big one was that I already felt overwhelmed with the three that I already had. I was working through a lot of trauma triggers that I didn't know were triggers still at the time. I had not yet gone through trauma therapy. I had been in counseling for most of my marriage, but trauma therapy was not something that we had tackled yet. And when we found out that I was pregnant again, I got borderline HG, which is, if you don't know, I don't know how to say it, the long word, I just call it HG. Where you get really, really, really sick, and there's, different ways that this affects different people. I ended up having to get hospitalized with my oldest and had an IV at some point because I couldn't hold anything down. Was extremely sick, but avoided the hospital with the rest of them. However, I was within hours of being admitted with the twins because I simply couldn't hold anything down. And thankfully some medicine helped with that, and I was able to avoid a hospital stay right around Christmas. But suffice it to say, pregnancy has never been kind to my body, and I've never enjoyed being pregnant. And that was just another thing that was on top of I felt like I wasn't capable. So I had a very rough pregnancy with them. I got gestational diabetes and was having to give myself 2 insulin shots a day, and that was on top of being sick and then trying to take care of the kids. Most days I wasn't really able to do much, so it was very rough, which was not helping me overcome the initial anger and resentment that I had that I was pregnant in the first place. So, and the reason I'm starting here is because before I got pregnant with them, I had actually enrolled back in college again, and my husband and I had a whole plan mapped out, and I was going to graduate about the time that our now middle child started kindergarten, which would mean that I could get a job and help our family, which, we've struggled financially our whole marriage. This is something I'm open about, not in a pity me way. It's just, it is what it is. Finances are tight. I don't have a degree, and childcare is so expensive, that wasn't able to go get a job while they were younger because it would have not even covered childcare. And then now that they're all in school, I did try to have a job, but I got interrupted and I forgot where I was. Anyway, the point being was, I was going to finish and help us out. And I got pregnant towards the end of the semester, and then was so sick over finals that I bombed one of them, and I was very angry about it. Somehow made it through finals week and didn't slaughter my GPA. But that was extremely frustrating to me because I didn't know at the time, when I had to make the decision that I wasn't going to be going back to school in January of the following year, that I had twins but I just knew I was pregnant, and I knew how sick I got every single pregnancy, and I was already getting sick, and so I knew that there wouldn't be any way I could do it. Once we found out it was twins, it was just like this mental sinking understanding of okay, school's just out the window. Like, maybe eventually in the future, but with 2 more, if we were talking, everybody's different, everybody's, for me personally, this is for me personally, I would not be able to do it. I know good and well I wouldn't be able to. It takes everything out of me to parent as it is, and adding school on top of 2 more humans was just not gonna happen. And I know that I think I came to an okay place with that, because clearly, in my opinion, God was closing that door. Now, maybe that door will open again in the future. As of right now, there's no way. I am an overachiever by nature, because I was always out to prove that I wasn't the stupid person that my parents told me I was every day, but there's no way I would be able to survive and do that right now. And it is all I can do for my 5 children. As it stands, I've had so many things I've wanted to get up here and talk about. It is so hard to get away with them home for the summer, and I don't want to ignore them, and I don't want to just appear up here all the time. And as far as videoing for my sewing channel, that has been incredibly difficult, because they are so loud, and it's fine. Like, this is their home. I don't want them to feel like that they have to like walk around and be like, shh, shh, because mommy's filming for her sewing channel. Like, I don't want that. So it's like, okay, are they being quiet enough that I can come and run in here and do the next step on the sewing project? So it's just been a thing to even get up here and do this right here. But the whole reason that I brought up that semester of school was because I was headed for graphic design. That was what I was headed for. I'm not sure if I would still want that one at this point, if I did go back eventually. I don't know. I haven't even thought about it. But the point is, at the school, one of the classes that I had to take to go down the route of graphic design was the entry art class. Now, we were told that this was a very difficult class at the beginning. Our teacher told us all it was, and that usually it only had like a 10% pass rate or something crazy like that. And it was the class that would weed out who was actually wanting to go into art and could push through, and who really was going to go in a different direction. From what I'm remembering, we're talking at this point, the twins just turned 8, so it was before I got pregnant with them that we had this, so it was a while ago. But it's near 9 years ago. Wow. But that's how I remember it. And I got an A, like a high A in that class, and I was so proud. And throughout the whole, and I'm not saying that to brag, but it was throughout the whole semester, I would turn in a project, and I kept getting complimented by my teacher. Now, I had never been complimented before. Like, art wasn't a thing. I thought I wasn't good at art. I thought I didn't have that capability, although I loved it. I loved doodling, but that was very well and truly squashed out of me before I got older. And back when I was young, I don't remember how young, there was a brief time period where my mom got us in something that would now be considered a homeschool co-op, but this wasn't normal back when I was young, and this was a very odd thing. And I think it really got started because one mom really wanted her kids to be doing artsy things, and so she talked to some of the moms, and most of the things we were not allowed to participate in because our parents tried very hard to keep us as isolated as possible. But for some reason we were allowed to do this one, and it focused on music, art, and drama. And you could pick which ones you wanted to go in. I was not interested in drama whatsoever. I was terribly shy of the camera, but I did love music and I did love art, and one of the art projects in there, and I did search before I started recording and I can't find it anywhere. I know I have it. I think all of the art projects that I did during those few weeks, because I was very proud of them. And if I can find pictures, I know I have pictures of them somewhere, but I also have the originals. But if I cannot locate the originals before I post this, I'll insert a picture here. But one of the art projects was we had to take our shoes off and put one of our shoes, and put one of our shoes in front of us on the table and just draw it. And I remember being extremely terrified because I was like, there's no way I can draw my shoe. I was wearing I think it was a Spalding. And how I know this is because that's how detailed I drew my shoe. But I could be wrong on that, on the branding. But it was a really old tennis shoe, and it had intricate stitching and everything everywhere, and it was an old shoe. And so it was not in like pristine shape or anything. And I thought, there's literally no way I'm going to be able to draw this shoe. And somehow I ended up with it was such a dead ringer for the shoe that the teacher made a big deal about it. And I was so embarrassed because I was so shy. I did not want any attention called to myself. And, but it was really good. And I did a really good job on it. And then our teacher wanted us to work with emotion and color, and so we were supposed to give our shoe an emotion and then use our colors and lines to represent that. And I remember, a lot of the boys in the class did the angry shoes because they were giggling over them because they thought that was hilarious. And all the girls were doing like these flowy, wavy lines around their shoes with purples and pinks and teals and stuff, because I was like, oh, we have happy shoes. Well, I was the single solitary girl that did the angry shoe, and I did it very purposefully. But I did like these really jagged lines around my shoe and did, orange and red and yellow because I wanted my shoe to be angry. I think for obvious reasons now. At the time, I didn't understand what I was doing, but I know now what I was doing. I was getting out some of my emotions in my art. And anyway, so I'm really proud of it. But beyond that, no one had ever complimented me. No one had ever told me, my parents had been on a "You're Stupid" campaign. Literally, they called me stupid every day of my life and said I would never amount to anything. And so having a teacher at a college continually compliment my projects and tell me that I had an eye for color and I had an eye for lines was foreign to me. And it was like, I don't even really know how to process this information. And so when I dropped out of college, because twins, all of my art supplies got shoved to the side for a while because I was too angry to look at them. I didn't want to, I was intrigued and I was like, maybe I have a little bit of talent here, but I was angry that I had to give that one up again and didn't touch them. Randomly one day I was redoing our downstairs bathroom and I thought I would like a picture of a flower here, and I don't really want to go out and find one. I don't want to buy one, so let me just see if I can draw it. Let's see. I drew my shoe. I went past this art class, and supposedly not very many people passed, although I will note there was only 2 people in my entire class that didn't pass. So I don't know if the whole 10% pass rate was still accurate, or we just had an exceptionally talented class. I don't know, but I was not the only one that passed that class, and far from it. Anyway, so I pulled out a canvas, and I'm gonna note again, I went to sit down to draw a flower. I think I did not date the picture. I think I had just gone no contact with my parents, so that would mean the twins were about 1 year old. And let me just say, a flower is not what came out on the canvas. And we quickly went from a flower and pretty picture for my bathroom to trauma survivor art, and I didn't know that that was going to be a thing. I didn't know that that was what was going to come out, but I started drawing, and I still don't really know how to explain how what I'm about to show you came out instead of a flower, but I was in a very, very dark place in my healing. I was fresh off of no contact with my abusers, even though they were abusive, and even though I had wanted to go no contact years before this. That was still a very, very difficult hurdle to get over. It was a very, very difficult thing to do. It was a lot safer in one way to just keep them at arm's length and not really talk to them that often. I didn't know what the fallout with my family was going to be, extended family, all of that. I mean, there's a lot we could get into about why there's one part of me that thought it would be easier to just continue not going in no contact with them. But then the trauma part of me was in, like, my brain was trying to start allowing me to process the trauma, but I couldn't because I was still in contact with them, and it sent me to a very, very dark place. And it was just for pure survival that I had to finally make that decision. And it was so wonderful to have all of the people in my life be so supportive and tell me how proud of me they were when I finally did. It was the best decision I made, and I regret not making it sooner. But anyway, the art that came out of the day that I was supposed to be making a flower was, and we're talking about trauma here, so I should just put a trigger warning on my whole channel, but I'm showing my art here. So let me make sure that this is. So here is what I painted. So I wrote things on the rope and the tape because I felt imprisoned for my entire life. And and purple is my favorite color, so that is representative of me. Brown hair for me, and the green eyes for me because I have green eyes. So on the tape and the rope are written, "You're stupid, idiot, foolish, shut up, lazy, worthless, rebellious, ugly, defiant, pathetic, idle, ridiculous." These are all words that my parents used to describe me or to yell at me and scream at me all the time. So yeah, this was not a flower. Well, as is a fantastic example of why this is difficult. I had to stop immediately several hours ago, and I'm just getting back to it, and I don't have that long before I have to go again. But yes, so where we were, this is my first painting ever. I did this with gouache on a canvas, and I figured out already that I like acrylic better, because the next one I did that I'll show is acrylic, but this was very pointed, and it did make a lot of people stop when they came into my room to see it when I was working on it. So I'm really proud of my sky details and the wood details and the brick details and everything. I'm really proud of this. But this isn't a painting that you just go, and hang on your wall. So my kids haven't seen it. I've actually made sure that they didn't. Every time they came into the room, I would turn it around backwards, and I ended up just telling them, this was not a picture that they were going to see, and I would show them a different one. But, they'll probably see it eventually. But this was very symbolic of how I felt as far as being completely bound and imprisoned by the words that were used to keep me in my place, quote unquote. And I still fight them. Like, even just the story I told of the semester at college when I dropped in my GPA a little bit because I was so sick and I was pregnant. I had a 4.0 and I dropped to a 3.8, and I was so angry because it was like I felt like it was not my fault, and I couldn't. I was very, very sick, and in a way it still felt like I was being told, see, you can't do anything. And I know that that's stupid in one way because like I had a 3.8 out of 4 and that's great, but there's been this constant need that I've had to fight to prove my worth. And so anyway, this was it. This is what came out, and not a flower. So that is the first painting. And then I did a second one when I was this one was actually done prior to me meeting with my trauma therapist. So to not beat around the bush, but be careful of how I word it here on this channel, I had gotten to a point where I, for the first time, had felt so broken and so much like I was just going to ruin my children that for the first time in my life, I almost made an attempt on my life. And I do believe that God stepped in and stopped me that day. And it was also my children that have always been my rallying cry to do better and to not do what was done to me. And so this painting was in the weeks following that incident, when I got put on an emergency wait list for a therapist, and it was still a 6-month wait, even though I was marked urgent, and I verified that a few times, which that's pretty concerning that it took so long. But this painting was an outlet, and then I blogged a little bit, and my blog is still out there. I haven't posted on it in forever, but I did post a lot of stuff on it for a while. So then I finally got my therapist, and slowly through that, I got to a point where I was wanting to show another way that I had felt in bondage, and so begat my second painting, which is here. So there is a lot of symbolism here. So if you will see, the club here is labeled scripture, because I still believe in Jesus and I have a relationship with him now, but it looks, again, vastly different than anything I was taught. However, growing up, scripture was not safe, and it was used as a weapon against me. There's a whole passage about the fact that the Bible is the sword of truth, right? And that is to defend yourself. Well, there was a sword in my imagery, but not for defense. It was used in constant attack mode. Now, I went with club here because I felt like I was being constantly beaten up with scripture. Like, my parents would use the Bible to excuse every bit of their abuse, whether it was making us go days without food and saying, well, if you don't work, you don't eat. Here it's in the Bible, except that we were working ourselves to the bone, but it just, for whatever reason, wasn't good enough. And so anyway, we were still denied food for, I think the longest I went without food one time was 7 days. And she said that we just didn't deserve to eat. And then there was like the scriptures about sparing the rod, spoiling the child, which was used to excuse the horrific beatings that they would do. And I'm not talking about, like, I have a problem with spanking, period. But we're not even talking about if you don't have a problem with quote unquote normal spanking if this was well beyond. Like, I remember, so counting was a coping mechanism for me. And so I would count my siblings' beatings so that I would know how many I was going to get next, because she would line us up at the door and always start with the oldest, and I was second oldest. So I always counted my brothers, and then we got to me. So I would know how many I was going to get. And then I would count, and you know, if you screamed at all or jerked or whatever, in any way that would demonstrate that you were fighting the punishment, then they would start over. So take this with a grain of salt as far as like how loosely this number is accurate. It was probably actually more than this, but I think I would usually lose count around like 140 beatings with the belt. And I mean, this was multiple times a day, and they did bottom, bare bottom, and bottoms of our feet. And particularly with the bottoms of our feet, that one was horrible in that it irritated my mom a lot that we would yank our feet away. So what we had to do is we had to lay on our stomachs on the floor, and then she would beat the bottoms of our feet over and over and over again. And if she got so angry that we would jerk away, that she started sitting on me and standing on me so that I couldn't move, while she just laid into the bottoms of my feet with the belt. So we're talking about beatings over and over again, to the point where I could barely walk, could barely move. And then sometimes that would start beating over, because she was always say that I was faking it, and that I better not pretend like I couldn't walk. So there's that. So scripture, that's just two. That's just two of the major physical abuses. There are so many more, and every single one of them she used scripture. They both used scripture to excuse their actions and to basically beat us up with it. And you know, as far as on that note goes too, another big one was that I got reminded quite a few times that quote-unquote rebellious children got stoned to death in the Old Testament. So it was lucky I was not born in the Old Testament times, because I deserved to be stoned to death. So, you know, that's always fantastic to know that that's how your parents feel about you. Said very sarcastically, if you did not catch that. So there's that. And then of course there's like the room that's like prison and isolation, because we were always isolated. And then the chains I have here are patriarchy and religion, because, you know, a relationship with Jesus wasn't a relationship with Jesus. It was the religion and their religion that they worshipped, which was not what I follow now. And patriarchy, need I say more? Down with patriarchy. Anyway, so those are the chains here, and that's what they were. And that's why I labeled them what I did, because that's, to me, what they were. They were chains. And then fetal position here is a position well known to me, as in this was many times the position I took on the floor while I was being beaten with a belt over and over again in the middle of the night. This has been the position that my husband has found me in the closet over and over and over again. We just celebrated our 18th wedding anniversary, and it's been several years now since an incident like that has happened. But over the first 12 to 15 years of our marriage, there were many times he came home to find me in this position in the closet, hiding from the kids, because I was either in such a triggered, overwhelmed, or flashback state that I could not function. So this was a very purposeful decision on my part. Every bit of this is a very purposeful decision. So yeah, so this is my second one. And again, not one you're gonna go hang. I want to try to get a little closer here. And this one is acrylic, and yet again I am so very proud of this. This was so therapeutic and so healing to get out. So those are my 2 paintings so far. I have several more in my head that I would like to get out on canvas. I haven't really had time to paint recently since I finished this one. It's a whole thing. I've been sewing a lot more. There for a while I was just really trying to focus on my sewing channel and was trying to grow it, and that wasn't really successful. And as I've said on that channel, that's technically fine. Like, I never intended to try to get YouTube to a point where it would be like job or anything like that. It would be nice if it would get to a point where it was at least making a little bit of something, but I really was just sharing the sewing because I really just love sewing and love showing it off and want to inspire other people. And so, but on that note, I was also trying to gather a little bit of a following so that I would feel like I had at least some start for sharing my story. But at this point, if I wait for that to happen, I will never share it. And it's getting to a point where I feel like it is extremely important for any survivor that has the ability to come out, because a lot of survivors just simply can't. And it took me a long time to get to a point where I could do this publicly. I feel like it's so important, and I try to go support any survivor that I find. And so anyway, I wanted to show off these and show them off like they're something fun. They're not fun. They're never going to get hung on at least my wall. But one day soon, I'd like to pull my paints back out and try again. A friend of mine went and got me a whole bunch of stuff for some oils, and I've never painted with oils. I mean, honestly, first gouache, first acrylic, I've never painted before. So clearly I obviously haven't done anything with oils yet either, but those look so fun and I want to do it. So I do have some oil paints, and I have some canvases that my husband has set around, but we'll see. In the meantime, I am very proud of these. They were so healing to do, and yeah, I figured that would be a good thing to do in my next video. I'm gonna try to do this more, but like I said, it is so tough to get up here. And honestly, when I had to leave earlier, I thought I would be ending up this video in completely different clothes, a completely different day, because I didn't honestly think I would be able to get back up here today. And I'm kind of squeezing this in before I go finish some stuff up downstairs. And yes, if you didn't notice the jump, I got interrupted again, which is fine. Again, I want my children to understand that they can come get me, but that's why it's difficult. It has been a while since I sat down in front of the camera and talked. The video I put up right after, like, the last 2 days of school is the last time I've done this, because I just haven't been able to. So I'm hoping I'll be able to get to do it more, because this is really helpful to actually feel like I'm going somewhere, even if only 5 people see it. I don't care. Like, it feels so good to get it out and to start talking. Thank you for joining me for this. I know it can be very heavy here, and I believe I'm gonna actually start putting some links in the comment section that hopefully will be helpful as far as like where you can find other survivor stories. And I'm going to touch on that one probably in my next video, because there is a place that I have published mine under a pseudonym, and I'm ready to publicly identify myself, but I think that's going to be in a different video. But I want to start linking things that potentially could be helpful for people doing research. And if this was at all helpful to you, if you are a survivor as well and you find it, I hope this was helpful, and I would love to hear your thoughts. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I will check, and I don't really know the best way to end this, but I will see you in the next one.